Well, I'm really excited for you all to join us tonight for our fascinating panel on the future of real estate development. Now, I've asked this group of fabulous four to join me because they represent some of the most cutting edge, productive use of technologies that are disruptive already to the built environment today. I want to hear from them, and I think what you'll hear from them is very fascinating about the future of real estate development and what types of technologies we can see coming in the next 10 to 15 years to be more standardized, more massive market uptake, but importantly also what could be potentially possible between them. So this evening we are joined by Mark Pettit from Epic Games, Mariana Skrekovic from TU Wien, Benjamin Breslau from JLL, and Robert Besson from Arma. Now, I'd love to learn more, Mark, about what's happening in Epic Games, but I'm going to save you for the last because I know you have some special stuff for us. So I actually want to start to kick it off with Professor Mariana Skrekovic. Mariana, please tell us about what you're doing over at TUV.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to this very interesting panel. So I'm a researcher and a scientist at the TU Wien, as you mentioned. I'm working at the Department of Industrial Building and Integrated Planning. And this is placed at the Faculty of Civil Engineering at TU Wien, Vienna, Austria. So I have a lot of teaching in the areas of real estate development, process modeling, and also building life cycle. And my research areas cover the development of technologies and innovation actually and the change they induce in the digital world, let's say, especially in the IC industry. And in that context, actually, I've been leading a project which has started 1 year ago, which is called BIM Design, which is an abbreviation for building information modeling signed with blockchain and smart contracts, where we are looking at the application of these kind of technologies, specifically in the design phase. This is a project which is nationally funded by the Austrian Ministry for Innovation and Technology. And the specific thing about the project is that it's actually part of a transnational collaboration between Austria and Germany, where we have colleagues who are looking at different phases in the building life cycle, which means at the end of these 3 years, which are still going on for the next 2 years, let's say like that, we will try to do some kind of prototype for the usage of blockchain and smart contracts in the building life cycle, meaning we are looking now at the design phase. The colleagues from Germany are covering the construction phase, and other colleagues from our university are looking at the operational phase. So the aim is to see if this technology is even applicable in this context. And yes, so we are very much looking forward to the research results, which will hopefully come in the next 2 years.
Fantastic. So we'll finally get to see if blockchain is really there, really going to stick in our industry. That's great. Rob, so building off of that, actually, you work at this intersection of AEC. Can you tell us a little bit more what you do at ARMA?
So in terms of background, so we came through the academy at a time when, following the paperless studio, when the interface between computers and machines became interesting. And this interest led to learning to program in order to automate the production of computer-aided design geometry and the creation of digital threads that link design to production. But personally, for me, the execution of the idea was as important as the idea itself, and therefore it became really important to control the means of production. And that control was achieved through code. So, the whole idea of ARMA from the beginning was a hyphenated practice, and so we established it 10 years ago. And as a hyphenated practice, it was to bridge the gap between design and production, or architecture on the one hand and materialization on the other. And so over the past 10 years, we've really had the pleasure of continuing this ambition by working with some really amazing architects such as Kenga Kumar and some vertically integrated developers such as Lendlease. So it's for us, it's really like what you're seeing on the screen is working to create those digital threads that link design to the execution of the building.
Fantastic. So a lot of what you do also is to develop the threads or the initial threads of software to be able to showcase and develop the building. So the complexity is how we're going to create these crazy forms to ultimately physically make the structure and to translate that between the architect and the actual developer, which is a hard thing to do because they don't necessarily know how to talk to each other.
Exactly. So it's really looking at how we can leverage technology to bring those two parties together.
Yeah, and then learning also how to integrate increasingly the construction costs and also the construction financing behind some of these tools to really make the conversation very productive.
Exactly. It's really to take that and integrate. So take the industry, which we really see as being one which is fragmented at the moment, where you've got so many different players, each operating as point solutions, and then stitching that whole thing together through technology.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, Ben, you sit at the intersection of so many of these technologies. You spend a lot of time trying to help owners and operators actually adopt new technologies like what Rob's talking about, and also the type of blockchain smart contracts that Mariana's talking about. And that all comes in the form of data and data integration. And actually JLL is in the enterprise level is actually fundamentally leading that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do at JLL?
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. Exciting to be here with this esteemed group of leaders in the industry. So I'm the Chief Research Officer at JLL in the Americas. I'm a real estate economist by training, and it is both an exciting and very humbling time to be trying to predict what's happening in any market, but certainly the real estate markets. One of the fundamental things I think we all know about real estate is that it's been a less transparent segment as compared to other parts of finance and investment worlds. And so one of the things we've been trying to do fundamentally at JLL is bring more transparency to the markets that we serve and our clients. And we do that through a massive amount of data collection, synthesis, enrichment, integration, and analysis. And increasingly, we are leveraging technologies that help visualize that data to anyone around the world and create a really immersive experience. So our research team is very heavily involved in that effort at JLL, both in real estate development and investment, but also for real estate occupiers who are continually trying to find the right talent, the right locations, the right types of space, the right design, and putting all those attributes from historically less transparent or more disparate data sets together and in a decision-making framework is what we're really trying to do. And excitingly, right now, JLL, which is a several centuries old firm at our earliest iteration, is going through a very much a technology transformation of our own, where we have a new division, JLL Technologies, that really is putting both investment from a venture perspective, but also tech product and engineering and delivery for customer success and outcome really at the core of our mission across the real estate industry. So very exciting times.
Very, very exciting. And you're very busy with the process of data integration and data solutions. And I think so much of the industry is really trying to figure out how that's going to happen for them. And so the fact that you are one of the largest brokers in the world, if not the, and then dealing with actually all that data and delivering that back to customers is fundamentally important for driving this strain of the future of real estate development. And also for corporate owners. Mark, I want to hear from you. Tell me about what you're doing over at Epic Games.
Well, sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you guys. I'm not a real estate professional. I'm from Epic Games. You know, we're a digital entertainment company and an immersive technology company. So we're known for Fortnite, of course, but also for the Unreal Engine. And for this audience, the Unreal Engine is the digital twin platform. We don't do much. Our customers do the work, and I'll show 2 examples today, but we're really at the heart of creating digital twins, not only in AEC, but also in the manufacturing space, and also think of us as an aggregation platform. I mean, game engine technology is very relevant. It's been 25 years in the making. We can represent fully simulated world with embedded stories and storytelling in it. And that's a very, very generic tools to do presentation, but also to do visual communication to help the humans solve complex problems. And so I can show you two examples. I'll just share this in a second. That first example here is how one of our customer, Pronto, in Belgium, is creating a tool for real estate developers to create their own visual marketing assets by basically having a very, very simple interface. Think of it as it's built like a game, but it's not. It's an unfun game to configure an apartment and create some content and some imagery that is used to market that apartment. And the interesting there, it's not a dedicated agency. That tools, which runs off the cloud on any device, can actually be used by any real estate developer marketing department to create the content on their own. So that's the kind of things we do with the platform underneath that enable Pronto in this case to create that tool for real estate developer to create marketing tools. I wrote another example, which is the work one of our customers has done for GLL, the customer's Cityscape Digital in London, for a property of JP Morgan called Bishop Square. And really it's about, it's about revenue modeling and understanding how you best configure a building, so you can visualize all of the tenants using a 3D model, which, in this case is a non-photorealistic representation. So you have a tool to better understand the occupancy of your building. And similarly, that tool will allow you to do scenario planning, what if? And that's, what the technology can be used for, to visualize, what happens if, we cut this floor into space and we run this, and then there is the practical aspect, as you can see, but there is also, the revenue aspect. You can do a lot of analysis, on maximizing revenue and doing all of that. So that's the kind of things we do. Of course, we straddle design, construction, and operation. And our vision and what we try to propose to the industry is to embrace the digital twin platform very early in the process and keep that digital twin alive all the way through operation, so that data lives in the cloud, is alive and relevant, connected to IoT through the exact state of the building, and can be used for all of those purposes, which can be marketing, operation, asset management, and so on and so forth. So that's what we offer. We see good response from the industry, and we're the platform. We need companies like Cityscape Digital and Pronto to actually, or GLL themselves, to embrace those technologies and deploy them.
Yeah, no, I think so. Unreal Engine has become increasingly more of a staple within the AEC industry, or at least a known quantity, just because of the power of the simulator behind the engine and the storytelling power. So I think what's interesting about all four of you, and what is actually incredibly impressive to me about all of you and all of the projects that you've been working on, is that we haven't really fully realized all of these experiences quite yet. So we're sitting at this precipice of really pushing the next iteration of what we can do to digitize and automate to some extent, as well as secure and help tell the narrative ultimately of what it means to be in a building in the built environment, and really make it come to life and respond to so many of the challenges that we face. So we face these big challenges of sustainability, climate change, health, unprecedented health challenges, as well as automation. So now we can start to do a little bit more planning and more foresight and thinking, and I think with a lot of tools that you're all developing. So with that in mind, I wanted to kick it off with a couple of individual questions, but feel free to jump in if you guys have some thoughts or feelings about where things are going in either direction, because I think the intersection of where you guys are at is incredibly phenomenal and very interesting for this audience. So for you, Mariana, as a professor who works to develop applicable blockchain strategies in AEC, this technology has had arguably one of the largest hype periods in history. What would you say is the area where blockchain is starting to find traction and ground in the AEC community? So where are we where are we finding our way?
Yes, so I absolutely agree. There's a great hype for this technology. I must say that everywhere you go and you say you do something with blockchain, it opens a lot of doors, which I didn't expect, I must say, when we were applying the project. But I mean, blockchain has been prevalent in the financial industry. It has been born out of the cryptocurrency industry and so on. So this is something that one has to keep in mind when thinking about these kind of technologies, which are applicable in other areas where you have other features, other processes, other kinds of value chains. So if you think about applying or at least looking at possibilities of application of this kind of technology in the AEC industry, you have to keep in mind the context. You have different kinds of value chains, you have different kinds of processes. And the blockchain itself, I mean, I don't want to go into the technology because this is not the place for that, but it allows you, of course, to have a decentralized peer-to-peer network where you can have different kinds of transactions. And these kind of transactions can be monetary or can be other kinds of transactions, for example, a value, some kind of other value or services, whatever. So, of course, because of this nature, it seems like it would fit the industry. But I must say, because now a lot of researchers and a lot of, let's say, also companies are trying to implement that, it's all still on a very theoretical level. So when you look at use cases in the IC industry, there are almost none. I mean, realistically, because the gap is between really understanding the processes that are, existing in the value chain, let's say, of the whole life cycle of the building, and then really trying somehow to merge it with this kind of technology, which is still not well understood if you're not, for example, coming from the IT. But even if you're coming from the IT, if you don't know the industry itself, it doesn't, fit together. So you have a need for a huge interdisciplinary approach concerning this kind of implementations. So what we are experiencing now, for example, as I mentioned, where we really try to look at the application in the design phase, construction and operational phase, even in our project, we see that we have to explain to our colleagues who are dealing with construction. For example, an applicable case would be looking at the supply chain or the track record of payments between the construction companies, subcontractors, and so on, depending on the let's say, in the time frame, how the construction site is going on. So this is something that could be applicable, for example, or that our colleagues are looking at the tracking of payments according to the contracts which have been signed with different companies. When you look at the design phase where we are placed, you have completely different processes because you have the BIM model, which is, let's say, the model of the building, or as should be planned. And you don't have so many payments which are happening as, for example, in the construction phase. Of course, you have payments or between different, let's say, stages in the design, whatever. But nevertheless, these are different kinds of processes. And the difficulty for us now, even looking at this and this kind of, let's say, architectural offices who are, of course, dealing with BIM and us as well, is how to, let's say, find use cases where you have all the processes very transparent. Because the problem is that even if you're working on a model, not everything is transparent, not everything can be tracked, and you cannot always, look at, or let's say, know when the model has been changed. So you have a lot of kind of different processes going on in that sense compared to other phases. If you look at the in the operational phase, for example, you can look at tracking of, for example, maintenance issues or energy consumption or different kinds of issues that are happening there. But because we are looking at the combination of BIM and blockchain, we are entering a completely new field because you have problems that are already existing in the industry for a long time. For example, I mean, Robert will of course know that, but the problem, for example, of exchange of data or of domain-specific models between the architecture, the architect, for example, and the structural engineer. And there you have already problems existing for the last 20 years or something where you have, loss of data because of different software problems and so on. So what we are now trying to do in that sense, we have certain problems already existing which are not solved or are at least trying to be solved. And then on top of that, you try to as well implement a technology which is again complicated by itself. So these are the things that are now, happening. But to come back to your questions, there are almost no cases, where you have really applications of blockchain technology in AC. Certain are now coming up in the supply chain, mostly in construction. But if you look at other, or maybe some also in operation, but if you look at, let's say, combining the whole value chain, this is something that's, the whole life cycle chain, this is something that's absolutely still in development, and it will maybe happen, I don't know, we will try in 2 years or something like that. So this is the situation.
No, I think that's an excellent sort of summary of where the technology is at for us, and I think it's really relevant for us as an industry to understand that touch point of where it's at, and actually the challenge, to pinpoint the specific challenge. And that's actually a good point to actually turn to you, Rob, because you deal with that challenge all day, every day, and actually you're part of the solution. So you're actually creating some of the software that's helping to bridge some of these problems. So your work at ARMA starts at the beginning of design and construction, so building off of where Mariana is at. And as an expert in translating what architects and developers want into buildings and software products, how do you see the commercial real estate development industry shifting in the next decade? And how do we think about we're potentially going to solve this problem that Mariana is facing, specifically around understanding the processes, right? So if she can't get the contracts to be smart to talk to each other, she's got a matching problem. And so how are you helping to sort of resolve some of that matching issue?
Yeah, it's these disintegrations that we really have to solve. It's super fascinating. I think, from where we sit, the next 10 years will be characterized by automation and integration. And I really think this is going to have three primary impacts. Firstly, through the automation of digital twins, I think we'll start to see that buildings will shift from becoming bespoke, what they are right now, which is bespoke projects executed by a fragmented industry, and we'll move that into configurable products that are procured through organized supply chains. I think that's going to be the first primary shift, and we're starting to see that already. So this move from project to product as a building. And so I think this is going to be seismic, and we're going to see how that ripples through the industry. That's the first one. I think secondly, through digital twins, by achieving one-to-one fidelity of the digital design artifact with its physical manifestation, which we can do now through technology. We can get that level of detail, one-to-one fabrication level detail in the model. And so as design becomes as built, as we get that, as we couple that one-to-one fidelity with the rehearsal and simulation of the building's execution on site, we see through some of the work Mark's doing with Unreal. So using that simulation technology to see how the building is executed on site, what we're doing is we're going to effectively remove the execution risk from development. And it's the second shift. So number one would be move from project to product. Number two would be the removal of execution risk. When you look at those two together, I think we'll see the third shift. So achieving those first two impact the way that developers fit products to markets. So by stabilizing our products, stabilizing projects into products where we have them and we can reuse them, and removing the risk that surrounds the execution of projects, my belief is that the developers will have the opportunity to take products in search of markets. And this is different to what I would see currently happening. So, we'll start to see the automation of this new product market fit. I think those are the three shifts that I would expect to see.
Fantastic. And I think, so that product market fit are starting to make that match is actually at the heart of Mariana's problem, is that on a day-to-day basis, actually the process doesn't actually match. It doesn't try to do that match. Am I right, Mariana?
Yes, that's true. I mean, I also am looking actually even at the phase before planning, at the initial phase, let's say at the real estate. I mean, if you look at real estate development from our point of view, at least from our university where we are teaching that, you look at the whole life cycle, which means you start in the beginning, in the initial phase, when you even think about the project. So in that sense, even we are now thinking about applying blockchain in that let's say phase before. But yes, I completely agree, because if you want to, I mean, as Robert mentioned, if you want to, let's go from project to product, you have to have some kind of standardization, I guess, in a sense. So the question is, how do you standardize, a building, so not every building looks the same or something like that, which means you have to standardize some kind of processes or some kind of, I don't know, approaches or whatever. So this is, I think, the difficult thing to how to do that, with a creative industry. Yeah. Nevertheless, because you have the architect and you have the real estate developer who thinks in a different way, of course, as a product, but you still have the architect, the designer who has, this creative part, in the project as well. And you have the contract, which is another thing, and the question how to translate a contract into something that's digital, and something that's like a digital code, like a smart contract and so on. So somehow to find this connection, what was Robert saying?
Yeah, wow. I think now we really need Ben, because Ben sits at the intersection of so many technologies, and so he's got to play with them all, and he's got to bring them all together, and he's got to talk to people and try to bring that to market and sort of shift the industry. So he's on the front line. He's like literally a frontline troop to try to push some of these things forward. So I think what I want to know from you, Ben, is because you spend a lot of time synthesizing across platforms to deliver solutions to customers. In particular, one of your prized technology tools developed at JLL is Blackbird, which I call a geometric, geospatial, and relational data platform. That's my MIT spin on it. And so how does the work with Blackbird aim to integrate data to create solutions for real estate developers, but also in operations? So I know you track a lot of contracts hanging out in Blackbird, right? So you're kind of hanging out at this intersection point somewhere between Mariana and Rob and what they're trying to get done with this master data integration plan that you have. So how can you help, and what are you doing there?
Yeah, I think it flows nicely in the sequence here, and I think Rob's point about product market fit is a good transition, because we are studying through our research and our activities as a service provider across different markets what the different products are currently, which are certainly, as Rob rightly said, not homogeneous at this point or configurable. They're a little more fixed. And all have nuances, and the same is true for the markets, right? So product market fit, Blackbird actually, which is our 3D proprietary patented visualization technology that you see a screenshot of behind me, was our way really to help bring the market to life. So to try to understand what product can fit the market, whether it's a development or an investment or an acquisition, or repositioning of an asset, or even just an understanding of highest and best use of a piece of land in a marketplace that is very nuanced from geographic location to geographic location across cities and markets, but also within them. We needed a tool to really be able to understand, articulate, and analyze what was happening in a marketplace, from everything to demographics and economic conditions, which might dictate where demand drivers are currently and in the future, to the physical real estate landscape of supply and demand in the marketplace, and all the way down to the asset level of what's happening within the spaces, what's working and what's not working. So we use Blackbird and other technologies integrated into it as a tool and a mechanism to really bridge that entire life cycle, if you think about it from a developer's perspective or an owner's perspective, or really even an occupier's perspective when they're looking at where to locate a facility in order to get the best talent or be close to customers or be far away from competitors or whatever it is that they want to try to do to gain a competitive advantage using real estate. And so it's, one of the things we always say, and I think the others on the call would agree, is that real estate doesn't operate in columns and rows, although it's long been analyzed and presented in columns and rows.
Yeah.
And so the Bishop Square example that Mark used earlier is a great example of how you bring real estate to life in the way that it actually operates or could operate in the future. And so Blackbird is really at its core a data integration platform that has really experiential and immersive visualization on top of it. So we have millions of data points, something like 25,000 different data layers that are all integrated that really can answer almost any question from the market down to the product that gets asked in that life cycle of real estate. And interestingly, in the world we live in today, it's ever more powerful, because if you are an investor looking to find a site to develop or a partner to venture with, or an acquisition opportunity, and you're sitting in a German open-ended fund in Frankfurt, or in a sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East, or in a life insurance company in Japan, how do you go actually see the market right now? And so Blackbird is our way to, in a sense, bring the market to you.
Amazing. And so together, this is starting to pull. I hope the audience is also starting to see that we're crafting a bit of a narrative here, where we're creating a digital pipeline and a matching, a communication pipeline across these different siloed disciplines that really desperately always wanted to talk to each other. I think top secret, maybe the information in transparency, was lucrative, but it's also become a huge handicap over time. And I think that's started to, and I think Robbie put the operational risk of actually getting this job done has become way too high. And it outstrips any sort of potentially supernormal profits that may actually occur on the other side, if you're so lucky to be able to get it done. So Mark, and now I really want to turn to you, because I think with the notion of the digital twin, right? This idea, this technology that's been in, it's been in the works for about 30 to 40 years now. It comes out of space, astro and aero research, and so the world has taken it on, and particularly the video game industry has felt, oh, wait a second, this is actually our sweet spot. We could really get in here. And I think that's really fascinating. So tell us a little bit more about that, and also how, and if possible, if you can start to reflect how your technology is trying to bring all of these different technology tools together to tell a story.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to it. One is, of course, we provide a high quality visual. We support all those fancy VR, AR devices. We create, all of that. But I think, back to the earlier point, I think the fundamental is we provide an open data model for simulated world and stories. And I want to insist on the word open, because I think that's like an underlying theme to this conversation. And the disconnect is, and the issue I think we need to focus is on the data. Let's forget about those VR headsets. They're clunky. They'll figure themselves out. We'll have AR, no worries about it. But we need to solve the data problem. And, I'm lucky to sit across multiple industry. I've spent a long time in the film industry. We've seen the emergence of a strong open source movement to actually liberate the data and not be hostage. The software vendors and application versions and all that stuff. And I think that's, I think there is much more at stake in the AC and the real estate world about creating open data platform. And Ben, I'm in awe of what you guys do with Blackbird, and I actually, it must be quite an endeavor to aggregate all of that data and extract it from people who actually want to hoard it. And I applaud that. And I think as an industry, we need to start thinking about that data liberation and how we create those open platforms. I think it's essentially critical to not hold back, technological development that are critical for humanity. And Robert, you have a point. We have a lot of people showing up on this planet and being born, and we need homes for them. And so we need to accelerate construction. We need to solve those problems. And I think, again, the Unreal Engine can help being kind of the presentation layer and the simulation layer. But I think the real challenge is around the production of data that we can actually all share, exchange, and is open. There's no other word. It's got to be open. I think that's a big challenge for us.
Yeah, amazing. So I think that's interesting that you say that, because a lot of what I hear is that actually it's the reverse, that the storytelling platform is the hardest bit, and the data integration will get there. I guess it's where you're sort of the layer that you're coming from. And I teach data science and machine learning for real estate at MIT, and we're busy with data integration. So I'm thinking the storytelling part is the more challenging bit, but you're telling me actually the more challenging bit is the data integration. So I think I think we've got work to do. It's good. It's good. We've got a job, and I always look up to the work that they've done at Blackbird because it's such an exciting technology and
it started with design and construction. I mean, the design data is not relevant for construction, and it's kind of get ditched and rebuilt. We work a lot with construction company. They don't really use a lot of the data produced by the designer, and so some of it is again because it's a disjointing data platform that the design data completely ignores the needs of the construction people.
Yeah,
I care. So I think that's the revolution we need to do in opening this, so that we can bring to bear a lot of tools, but on a shared data model.
Yeah, I think that's actually been truly missing. So there's this really big silo also between the architecture and the operational finance side of things. So when I look to Ben and I say, hey, Ben, tell me what the value proposition of engaging in X, Y, and Z strategy, so a smart and healthy building strategy. Blackbird can answer that question. But what is the design and technology interventions that went into making that? Now that's a different question altogether, and it's a harder one because we have such a loss from the beginning of the front line. And I think maybe what Mariana is working on with actually creating these smart contracts where we actually track this over time really might help solve our problem. So I think this actually brings us to our next question, and I want to pose this actually to the group, and I think it would be great to talk about what we think the value proposition is of actually coming together as a strategy. I know it's a tough question, but I think it's one worthy of musing on. So what would be the value proposition of engaging in a high-level coordination of all of these types of technologies? So as individuals who sit on the front lines of deploying all of these different technologies, what is the value development for each of these stakeholders engaging in such a technological effort? So it's a complex question, but I think it's an important one of us even trying to take a stab of what the value proposition is here or what your experience is. So actually, Ben, I'd like to start with you. Could you see data integration, like the true value proposition of data integration across this new real estate development future that we're trying to propose here in this panel?
Yeah, I can. I think it will be a hard path to get there, but I think it's the holy grail to some extent. I completely agree with what Mark was saying, that there is tremendous value in what is currently really adjacent silos of data, and actually adjacent silos of technological capability as well. And integrating those, I think, will unlock opportunities, will help developers and investors in real estate, and also service providers in the supply chain of production for real estate and servicing real estate minimize risk, and be more predictive and even prescriptive with optimization, both in the production and delivery of new products, and also in the management of them over time. As we know, real estate as a product is operationally intense still. And you think about the data that's coming out of IoT systems around energy usage and utilization and design, benefits and flaws. We, just as an example of even opportunities within a firm like JLL, we manage on behalf of corporate occupiers and also investors something like 5 billion square feet of office space around the world. So just think about the data that is flowing through sensors that are already live and wired through that, and connecting that in, the insights you can draw from that, how people are using space, where they're using space, how buildings are operating efficiently, which design, and you've done some great research on this in the lab, Andrea, which design elements drive the most value for the consumer, which is where the revenue comes from real estate, or the value in the assets. There are tremendous insights, I think, including in the storytelling and the visualization, that can really improve in our industry. And I think we're just on the cusp of getting into that new world.
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic point. And I'd like to turn to Mariana now, because I think, Mariana, your work is really at the beginning of the chain. And actually, it's really critical for us to really start to invest. And I think Mark points this out, and I actually believe Mark. I trust Mark, and I think he's really onto something there. So if we get your part right and really think about that data integration and that tracking, especially if we use blockchain at that earliest stage, I think actually we'll really be on to actually really shifting the industry and setting it up right, because we don't do data collection from the start, and it hindered us. So to build off of what Ben's saying, it hinders us later to answer those questions of what creates value. What's that differentiation strategy that creates and attracts people, creates healthy places, creates smart places? So Mariana, what can we do to create a value proposition at the earliest stage for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, I must say, for example, I mean, one has to compare a little bit, US or Europe, you have different, let's say, constraints concerning assets, because the most valuable asset at least in Austria or in a lot of parts of Europe, is land. Okay, so this is the most valuable asset, and that's why you have a lot of buildings here which are underused, are not used all the time, and it's a huge, topic to try to refurbish buildings and to use them more, let's say, efficiently. Okay, so this is one thing. But to come back to your question, I mean, I absolutely believe that data integration is crucial for everything. I mean, for the whole value chain of the building, because when you look just at how much, for example, the planning costs in the beginning, like just planning has influence on the operational costs, like with 20% of 100% of the let's say of the costs, you influence 80% of the costs which are occurring then in the maintenance phase or operational phase. It means that you need to integrate data in order to know how to do that later. So I don't believe that blockchain itself can solve the problem, not at all, because the problem is, of course, existing with, let's say, the interdisciplinary data exchange and modeling of buildings. As you know, in building information modeling, which should be a tool that facilitates, let's say, the tracking of data concerning design, construction, and operation. But nevertheless, in practice, it doesn't work like that. So I think also Mark mentioned it in a way. So this is a huge problem, how to even deal with the technology that architects are using nowadays. And then, of course, construction companies should use as well, and so on. So you have certain features of this technology, which is the main technology that you need to use in order to design a building, which has, let's say, at least theoretically, applications where you can add to the 3D model, for example, data such as time frame, then the costs, then the life cycle, and so on. Then you go from 3D to 3D BIM to 5D BIM and 7D BIM, whatever. But reality looks different. So the main thing, I think, and even if you say how to include the real estate developer or like the principal from the beginning, or the investor who doesn't know anything about the design phase or the construction phase, to let's say apply all his or implement all his wishes in the building, it's a huge question mark how to do that. So we are actually at our institute or working at open interpreted data exchanges already between architects and structural engineers. So we have already let's say algorithms which help to reduce the loss of data just between these two disciplines. But nevertheless, I think there's a long way still to go how to incorporate this kind of information into one model, which would suit for the whole life cycle. But this means as well, I must say, a change a little bit of the industry itself, because the industry itself is somehow sometimes innovation resistant, because you have, the problem is also always about the cost and investment. If you want to say to a subcontractor, okay, you have to take the BIM model and and get all your working plans from the model, he will say, I don't care, I just need printout and I'll do it. I'm not going to look at the model because I need skills for that. I need to invest in the technology and these kind of things. So you have a lot of different kinds of constraints which hinder let's say the integration of data. But nevertheless, I think the industry has to tackle this problem, and then of course in a concurrent way maybe think as well about applying all these kind of different technologies which are inevitably there. So yeah, this is the thing,
and it's happening. So I think they kind of don't have a choice. So Rob, in that regard, for you, because you're busy doing it. You're very busy doing it. You're very busy integrating at this very early stage. Tell me a little bit about what you see the value proposition is in getting that done.
And I think it's, part of the reason for where we currently fall short on projects is, it's simply because we simply just run out of time often, right? Like, that project was the best we could do with the resources we had at hand at that moment in time. So, part of the value we can add now is by, leveraging technology to improve that outcome. So right now, what we're trying to do by explicitly codifying professional and industry knowledge, we're able to create reusable content. I think that's key for us and this goes to Ben's point about insights, by being able to harvest those insights from IoT devices and sensors and data, operational insights, and use that to iteratively develop products, and components, so building components which are reusable. Allows us to creatively combine those components into products, into configurable products which are differentiated. And, and further, we're doing the same thing with construction by creating reusable site processes and procedures. So ultimately, by digitizing and quantifying design components on the one hand and construction processes on the other, it enables us to simulate and refine the behavior of the environment. And this is exactly, what Mark is showing is showing how that's working digitally before we get to site. So this digital rehearsal number one, and secondly, this iterative product development, I think ultimately results in better buildings and a better built environment. We can do it first before we get there, before we get to on site, and harvest all those insights and put the contracts together, get people together. And so that's where I see the benefit.
I think that's actually true, because if you buy back the time to not reinvent the wheel every time, it's not taking away the creative process. So you're not going to take, because designers are amazing, and their intellectual synthesis capabilities is unlike anything I've ever seen. The greatest gift of my life has been to work at the School of Architecture and Planning and to just witness what they can do in 3 hours. You're like, you did what? You invented a whole new building system? Okay, all right. It's quite something. You're like, oh, okay. So that's phenomenal. So you don't want to take away that human ingenuity ever, but there is a lot of dumb loss of time in rendering. So that if I think about what Unreal Engine does, if we talk to the best renderers in the game, they say, you want me to show you something beautiful? Give me Unreal Engine, and I'll show you a stunning walkthrough of a spectacular structure, and I'll show you this experience in a way that you've never had it before. So Mark, I want to give you a chance to reflect on actually this true narrative that everybody's coming to. You've done a great job, by the way, of actually fulfilling what I wanted you to do, to tell the story of the future of real estate development. But Mark, can you let us know your vision, the engine of the digital twin that can help us to bring this all together, and the value proposition for that?
Yeah, I think there's two axes. One is, as you say, we want to be a ubiquitous visual communication tool. So we create tools like Twinmotion. Like if you know how to use PowerPoint, you can do presentation with 3D data. So we're very, very focused on it, on making sure that tools are accessible and usable and fun. I mean, it's, we use the language of video games. We use the technology of video games to create applications and not like boring desktop thing from the 70s. But, interactive and immersive and work across multiple platforms and are multi-user. That's the one thing that video game technology brings is, it's not a single experience. As we speak, we have people doing multi-user editing on terrain and buildings inside of Unreal Engine from home, wherever they are in the world. We haven't solved the time zone problem, but we have solved the multi-user problem. So that level of, the technology platform has a lot of characteristics in terms of, the visual quality and again, the collaboration and the raw speed. We have entire countries in Unreal Engine. Like we saw a video of New Zealand the other day. It was quite amazing, level of fidelity. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the openness in terms of business model. I mean, people may not realize, but the Unreal Engine is actually free. We only sell optional support contracts. Technology, the source code is available. I mean, it's when we pitch an open world, we're practicing it ourselves. You know, as long as a C++ compiler available, your data is yours. You will always be able to open the data built into the Unreal Engine because of that level of openness. And we succeed where our partners succeed. It's a very actually powerful business model. Personally, I was an executive in a top software design firm that I won't mention. I see, the business model of openness and generosity is actually much more rewarding, even financially, than other things. So I think being open is really at the core of what we do, and we want to be leading. And we support all of the open source format, Cesium, Speckle, all that stuff. We're really we have our mega grant fund, $100 million that we put actively to support all kind of initiatives, particularly in the domain of open source. So we're trying to be a leader in that space as well, to show that, you can create an open data platform for aggregation, which has a lot of visuals and storytelling quality at the same time.
It's phenomenal. So I think we're starting to run out of time, and so I just want to be mindful of everybody's late night. And so for some of you, you're traveling, you're in the middle of the night, or you are very early in the morning. So we really want to be sensitive to that. And I just want to leave it on some closing notes. So Rob, if you were to sum up what we need in one word, what would you say? What would you say we need to do? And actually, I'm going to turn to all of you in a second. So I put Rob on the spot first. So
in one word, what we need to do.
What we need to do. So what do we need to do to change the future of real estate development?
This in one word. It's a tough one, Andrea. You really, in one word, what do we need to do? I think we need to build. We need to set up. We need to build a platform where we're not starting from scratch all the time. I can't sum that into one word, but we need to stand on the shoulders of the work that's come before us. I think this is where I really see us improving.
Okay, stand on the shoulders of giants. I'll take it. Okay, yeah, platform. All right, Ben.
I think we need to, I'm not going to try one word either, because that's way too hard for this complex of a topic. I think we need to really think about the integration of the virtual world with the physical world, and even to the point of thinking about the value of virtual real estate versus the value of physical real estate, and how physical real estate has become really this immersive experiential thing, and the virtual side, in addition to being productive, also has to be that.
Yeah, great. The virtual has, and we've just learned this in the past 4 months, how incredibly productive the virtual is. It's quite something. Mariana?
I would say that we really need to know our processes and how to integrate processes. This is something that I really think. And yes, and combine them with the solution that we think that the digital technology would offer us for this kind of processes. Because I think it's always the question, what kind of problem do you want to solve with that? So yeah. I'll leave that.
And Mark?
Well, I'll echo what Ben is saying. For me, the word could be twinning. We need to work on building in parallel the real and the virtual, and making sure we fully grasp the value, understand the value, and leverage the value of the virtual models. And our lives has become digital over the past 3 months overnight. So we've learned so much already about the power of digital tools and virtual. So I think we need to work on getting those two things in sync all the time, and that's the twinning process.
So if I were to summarize, we're going to create a physical, virtual, integrated process platform that can help us create fantastic experiential spaces.
Just flows off your tongue.
It's there. That is the future of real estate.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's it.
Andrea.
We're done. Everybody, we can go home. All right. All right. Well, I have to say thank you so much for taking the time. we unfortunately went a little bit over, but I'm so incredibly grateful for your thought, your insight, but most importantly, the hard work that you do every day to create better buildings and better places for all of us. I know it when I walk into one. I know it. I actually walked into a JLL space the other day. It was lovely. It was fantastic. So I really, really appreciate the hard work that gets done by you, by each of you, by creating these experiences, for helping facilitate these experiences, and even designing and developing spaces. Actually, when you walk into an ARMA facilitated building, you know you're going into something special. So I think I really want us to keep going. So I hope that this is inspiring for tomorrow for you guys. It's been certainly inspiring for me, and I hope for the audience that they've learned a little bit about where things are happening and actually what's going to get going in the next 10 to 15 years. This isn't going to go away. We're going to keep building this. So I'm incredibly excited and incredibly grateful for your hard work and energy and your time with me today. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.